What is good, everyone? Welcome to X Chapter channel on a beautiful sunny day in Yokohama. Today I'm going to be talking about 5 rules for polite society in Japan that the Japanese themselves break. Recently I've been watching some Japan YouTuber videos about rules about Japan, like for tourists who are coming here to spend time. For example, 12 things not to do in Japan and 5 things that irritate Japanese about foreigners. And for the most part, I agree with the lists. They have some pretty good points, and they are things that you should be aware of if you come to Japan and you want to appear polite and not ruffle any feathers. However, there are some things from the list that I was thinking, you know, those are things that actually the Japanese themselves break. So that's what I want to introduce to you today. Now, in no way am I condoning any of this behavior. I'm not saying that, well, this means it's okay for you to come to Japan and do this. No, not at all. I'm just trying to, I guess, break the stereotype that it's only foreigners who break these rules. So, let's get started. First rule for polite society in Japan that the Japanese themselves break is giving up their seat to the elderly, disabled, or to pregnant women. And I've seen it again and again. Little old lady comes onto the train and everyone is studiously not paying attention to their surroundings. If we just ignore it, I can't be accused of being impolite. The most common way to do this is to suddenly be asleep. Don't want to give up that precious seat, and so feigning sleep is the best way to do it. Now, I always give up my seat for elderly people or others because, frankly, I'm trying to elevate the image of foreigners in Japan in general, and this is one small way that I can do it. The second rule for polite society that the Japanese themselves break is not properly lining up or queuing for the trains. This is a common one you find on lists done by other Japan YouTubers, but the truth is the Japanese break this one all the time. The most common way is, well, so the way it's supposed to work is you line up for the train where the doors are going to open, and when they do open, you stand off to the side and let the people off, and then you go on. What most often happens, though, is you have impatient people, usually men. I don't know why, but it's usually men that break this rule. They're off to the side and then they wheedle their way in, bumping into people because they want to go and snag that precious seat that's open. And while that's mostly men, I would say the people pretending not to notice the elderly or disabled that get onto the trains, that's pretty much every demographic. Pretty much everyone can be caught doing that. The third rule for polite society that the Japanese themselves break is the last one on the list, that is public transportation. And I get it. With the population density of Tokyo, greater Tokyo area, you've got a lot of people packed into small spaces, dealing with a lot of stress of their commute. And yeah, you're gonna run into rude people. The Japanese are no different. And again, I'm not condoning any of these behaviors. I'm not saying they're okay to do. You shouldn't do them. I'm just, again, trying to dispel the stereotype that it's only foreigners that are breaking these rules. So this third one that has to do with public transportation is the idea that everyone is quiet and peaceful out of understanding for others on public transportation. Frankly, there's a lot of noisy people on Japanese trains that are Japanese. Common examples include elderly men who I guess feel venerated enough by society that they can talk on the phone. You're not supposed to talk on the phone, but the greatest perpetrators of this one tends to be older men, I've found. And because they're older men, very often they don't have very good hearing, so you often get this, ha! Nani? Mo tsugu tsukimasu yo. Hai hai. Tokoro de. Like, it's just super loud, like, okay, I can hear you, man. Conversation that's going on. Other perpetrators of noise tend to be groups of older ladies, friends that are out for the day and they're laughing and talking, and high school boys are another big one. So it's not just foreigners who might be seen as loud on the trains. And I think part of the problem here is that foreign languages tend to stick out to the ear a little bit. So if you're Japanese and you're hearing Japanese conversation happen around you, it might not really register. But if you suddenly hear English or Spanish or Chinese or something, you're going to be like, oh, foreign language, and it just sticks out. And so I guess we're at a bit of a disadvantage, I guess you might say, because of that, and we might sound louder than we actually are. So again, I just recommend speaking more quietly on trains and buses than you might be used to in your home country. It's certainly a reverse culture shock of mine how many people talk on the phone in America. I get on the bus from the airport when I go to visit my parents, and yeah, everyone's on their phone. And it's like that reverse culture shock. Oh yeah, I'm in America. So it definitely is more prevalent in America than Japan, but to suggest that it's only foreign visitors in Japan who are doing it, it's just not true. The fourth rule for polite society in Japan that the Japanese themselves break is littering. Now, littering I know is considered bad everywhere, but I'm putting this one on the list because there's this image, you always hear these impressions of tourists who come to Japan who say, Japan cities are so clean, how do they do it? And there is truth to this. However, the problem arises when you get out of the cities. You see, in the city where other people might see you litter, out in the countryside, or when you're driving your car and there's no one around to see it, that's when it happens. I actually did a whole video on this called Japan's Strange Relationship with Garbage, and the basic idea of it is there are certain places in Japan where just people litter all the time. If you're ever in a vehicle and you're out in the countryside and you go through a tunnel, look at the sides of the tunnel. You're going to see full-on convenience store plastic bags full of trash that are just tossed on the sides of the tunnel. Out in the forest, on beaches, yeah, the cities are clean, but that doesn't mean the Japanese don't litter. And actually one of my first memories in Japan, period, I just moved to my new neighborhood, my first neighborhood in Japan. I watched a mother wipe the snotty nose of her son and then casually drop the tissue into the stream that was running along the path. And I remember not only being shocked by that action, but the fact that she just did it in front of her little kid, hence like showing the next generation that apparently this is acceptable behavior. So yeah, littering is definitely still an issue. The Japanese are no different than others in this regard. Now, the fifth and final rule for polite society in Japan that the Japanese themselves break is the most interesting one for me because I just learned it this week. Watching that video, the 5 things that irritate Japanese people, there was a rule in there that I didn't know. And that is, you shouldn't walk on tatami mats in bare feet. Now, tatami mats are one type of traditional Japanese flooring. It's woven grass mats, and you find them in Japanese homes, you find them in some temples, you find them in Japanese style inn called ryokan. And I didn't know that you're supposed to have socks. I knew the rule that you're not supposed to have slippers on tatami. If you're wearing slippers on other types of floor, you should take them off when you get onto tatami. But I didn't know the rule against bare feet. And so I'm wondering what might be going on here. It could be one of 2 things, or maybe something else. You can give me some clues in the comments if you yourself know. But the first thing is perhaps that YouTuber is a Japanese man who lives in Kyoto and works in the service industry there. And it might be the fact that Kyoto just is generally more refined than the rest of Japan. So they're more strict on something like no bare feet on tatami. And the other possibility is my wife and her family are just a bunch of country bumpkins who don't follow that rule. This is the reason why I didn't know this rule up until now, because I've been to ryokan, Japanese inns, with my wife's extended family, and everyone comes out of the hot springs baths and we're all just walking around the room barefoot. We're not putting on socks. And my wife's parents' house, the entire first floor is tatami mats, and plenty of times any member of the family has been walking around on the tatami in their bare feet. And so yeah, that's no one in my Japanese family, the Japanese people I associate with the most, none of them seem to care about bare feet on tatami. And so that's why it's a new rule to me. So let me know in the comments, is it a Kyoto refinement thing? Are my Japanese family just like total bumpkins? Let me know. That's a new one to me, and apparently, I guess, if you want to be really strict about it, wear socks on tatami from now on. All right, there's actually one bonus rule for polite society that I want to clue you in on right now, and that is you should like and subscribe. Hit like on this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't already. You see, the likes help my videos get out to a larger YouTube audience, and if you subscribe, I put out a new video every single Friday about Japan, life, culture, and society. So I have a lot of other content. You should go and look at my past videos and look for my future videos every week. Thanks for watching this one, and I will catch you a week from now. Peace.